R&B, listen to me and my G. We up in the studio, baby. Welcome to my podcast. This is the Russ and Blake. If you are here, it is not a mistake. Thank you all for joining. You will not be disappointed, I promise. All right. Welcome back, R&B podcast. You know what it is, Russ.
And Blake.
There it is. Um, yeah, I was excited for this one. We record at different times of the day, almost every time, whether it's early in the morning, mid afternoon, late at night, and it's cool to have the different vibrations.
Yeah, it really
I
is.
feel the energy today on this hump day.
Yeah,
So,
man.
got to thank God for this opportunity, and I got to make sure the camera's recording.
Yeah.
Why do I like?
I feel you. It's like when you leave the house and you're like, man, did I leave that candle lit?
Yeah, the candle's not lit, but we lit. And today, we got a cool topic because this kind of stems back into Russ's history as an athlete. And I didn't even really think about this from the athlete standpoint, but it is so important. And that's without a doubt. Being proactive instead of reactive. So, taking the action, planning ahead, anticipating, knowing what you need to do, and knowing what other people might do. And in sports, we see so many times. We talked about Russell Westbrook on one of our previous episodes, where the person who reacts is the only one that gets the punishment sometimes, and it's not fair. We all hate to see it happen, but it happens almost every time. Sometimes both people, but it seems like 9 out of 10 times the reactor takes the fall. So we're going to talk to y'all about how to avoid that, not only in sports situations, but in your relationships, in your professional life, and in your daily activity. So, Russ, talk to them about where this concept stemmed from in your life.
Yeah. And it has transcended so many different things that I've done. But I remember being a young basketball player, and one of the most influential coaches I ever had, a guy named KT Harrington, one of my good friend Deontay's dad. He coached us when we were younger, and just put us on to a lot of game within the game. Right, as you learn more and you get better and grow within your game, you start to learn like the game within and all these different things that come with the mentality. So he would talk to us about being proactive instead of reactive when it came to playing basketball. And he would say that for everything, offense or defense, right? If you have a move in your mind that you know you're going to make it with full force and make the defender react to you, and vice versa. If you're defending somebody and you have a plan, you want to force them a certain direction or speed them up strategically, you impose your will and make them react. In the game of basketball, it's all about who controls the pace. And that's when you start to learn the game within the game. At first, you think you're just trying to make shots. And then you realize, no, I'm trying to control pace.
Right.
I'm trying to make other people react to what it is that my mind conjured up and decided to do first. Right.
And the same goes for football, right? Run a hurry up offense because you control the pace. And when you're running the ball, you want to have the angles so that you make the move that the defender has to react to rather than them coming towards you and you having to react, because then you're going to lose your balance and you're going to get tackled. So for you to be elusive and for you to get out of situations unscathed, you have to know what to expect. And that comes from repetition and practice and studying your opponent and knowing their tendencies, right?
Sure, but also getting out of the way of your doubts, because usually once someone is repetitive in their movement and they have figured out how to do it without overthinking, the next thing is, are you going to doubt yourself and your decision-making process? That's a big part of being proactive in basketball, because I've seen it. No matter how good you can get, your mind can still be the one that blocks you.
Yeah, and then you come across someone that's a triple threat, and you know that he's capable of shooting the three-pointer. You know that he's gonna shoot the 4 out of 5 times, but here you are sacking off because you're afraid he's gonna blow by you, right?
Bro, and that's why Michael Jordan was taking people's souls on the basketball court, because he was so proactive that he put fear in defenders' hearts. And he was so nonchalantly proactive. He did it as if it was what he was supposed to do.
Right.
It was like, you guys are all going to react to what I choose to do on this court. And Michael Jordan, that's why he's the best player ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or one of the best players ever.
And it's interesting how the ability to be proactive and be able to anticipate moves that comes from an IQ. You talk about your basketball IQ or whatever sport you're playing, the IQ in that sport, but then your IQ in life. The people that read books and the people that educate themselves, the people that take the effort to understand other people, they're the ones that are able to anticipate behaviors and be proactive in their interactions on a daily basis too.
Mm.
So, from a sports perspective, yes, very beneficial. But you just trying to be successful in your life and your relationships, you have to educate yourself first. Because if you don't know what's going on and you don't understand things, you don't understand yourself, then you're not going to be able to basically guess what anybody else is going to be thinking or trying to do.
Mm.
Um, so one thing that comes along with that IQ is awareness. So as you educate yourself and you become more familiar with whatever surroundings you're facing or whatever task you're faced with, that awareness will increase, and then that gives you the opportunity to be a little more anticipatory as well. And there's situational awareness. So again, back into the sports realm, if there's a certain formation or a certain defense that you're faced against, that's the situation that you need to be aware of how to face, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that can kind of translate into social awareness on a more day-to-day basis. So Russ, you work with young kids that have issues sometimes processing their emotions and basically interacting appropriately with other people in their surroundings. So what have you seen from these children that kind of puts them in a tough spot because of their lack of social awareness?
Well, I mean, not knowing how they're making the people feel that they're talking to is like a main thing that usually puts them in a rough spot, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they'll continue on with their communication, not recognizing the social cues that the other person is trying to
Yeah.
show to them, right? And that, I mean, that can put you in a tough situation, or you could not recognize the anger that you're making someone feel until a situation becomes elevated, possibly physically or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think not being able to read reactions of other people. Am I kind of answering your question? Is
Yeah,
that the right
no,
thing you're asking me?
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely, because that can be frustrating for both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Because the kid doesn't realize what they're doing,
Right.
right? And then the other person might be frustrated, thinking that it's intentional
Mm-hmm.
almost. And sometimes it is intentional because they don't understand that they shouldn't be saying rude things or inappropriate things to get attention, and
Correct.
that is often how they get their attention.
Correct.
And it's a kind of a difficult cycle to break
Mm-hmm.
because they've seen the reaction that they get from certain behaviors, and even if those reactions may not be favorable, it's favorable to them in comparison to being ignored and being misunderstood.
Yeah, because we all want that group feeling. We all want to be accepted by the group and to
Mm-hmm.
feel loved, that feeling that we keep talking about. So
Yeah.
you will give out behaviors and just do what you think you know how to do to gain acceptance, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's something appropriate or not, or a behavior that's expected or unexpected,
Right.
right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that does have to be learned by some people, like
Mm-hmm.
has to really be daily worked on, like a practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when they move on, they have the skill. They genuinely do,
Yeah.
but it gets worked at every day, like you're saying, and it comes with being aware of just social cues, or at least aware of tone of voice, aware of posture. Maybe if you're not able to understand some cues, you can start to get better with the other ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you say that. I encounter a lot of people that don't understand the importance of your body language, your tone of voice, and
Mm-hmm.
all of the factors that go into interacting with other people. And that can be a dangerous, I guess, weakness to have, because some people respond to that lack of awareness in kind of an abrasive manner, and that
Mm-hmm.
can be really frustrating. But again, that comes to education, that comes to self reflection, and, the willingness to learn and take criticism, because it's not always easy to recognize in yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if somebody else points it out to you, you might not receive that well either, because it's not really easy to tell somebody that their behavior is inappropriate, especially if it's an adult. And
Especially if it's an adult.
yeah, yeah. So, what do you think is the best way to go about doing that?
Go about telling somebody about their behavior.
Yeah,
That's
because we might recognize that, oh, they're not reading the room, right? We've seen that. Or, it might be a repeated behavior where you're like, wow, this is really disruptive to this environment. It would be nice if they were aware and they could maybe try to improve, give them an opportunity if I bring it up to them. But, here I am. I don't want to be offensive and I don't want to make them feel like they're being attacked, but this is clearly an issue. So
yeah.
what's a proper way to go about addressing that?
Yeah, and you're bringing up all the very nice ways that you can go about doing that, because as we know just from watching humans interact, a lot of times when someone feels the need to almost like check somebody in a social setting, or check somebody in, just regular life at a grocery store or something that we're all at communicatively, it can be abrasive.
Yeah, usually is.
Right. And I honestly think everybody has their own personality style, especially if they feel like they need to be the one to address what's going on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Again, I try to focus on the tone of voice. I think that's important.
That's very important.
If you yell at somebody to tell them to be better, it's probably not going to happen.
And also, I would always err on the side of making it sound like, why is it good for them? Like, not trying to say that you're being threatened right now, or not trying to say that I think you're weird or anything, but communicating up front, hey, this is why this situation would be better or easier for you if you were to try to think about the people around you, basically.
And asking a question, rather than telling them, make them think about it, right? Because they probably lack the self-reflection and they need to think about what they're doing a little bit. So I've had those situations with people at the hospital, especially family members, high stress environment, a lot of emotions, and people are like berating me with these questions and they're really upset about the situation. And then I tell them, I'm sorry you're upset, but I've only been here for 4 hours. So a lot of the things you're upset about have nothing to do with me. I'm going to do my best to address all of your questions and try to fix as much as I can. And I'm sorry that this is going on, but again, I think you're yelling at the wrong person. And
so that little reality check kind of like, hey, to notice like who your real problem is with, or what your problem is.
You don't want to tell them like, oh, you have no right to be upset. Like you need to calm down. Nobody likes being told to calm down, right?
Yeah.
I still have that problem where sometimes I tell them, oh, you need to calm down. That never gets the reaction that you want. And that's another, sign of social awareness, situational awareness. When somebody's not calm, you probably shouldn't tell them to calm down, but maybe again, ask them a question that might make them realize that their emotions are really elevated for the situation.
Yeah, and sometimes a couple more things I can think of is like bringing up what the consequences could be, just kind of that other reality check, like, hey, this could be the consequences for the choices that you're making right now if you're not 100% sure. And then another thing, now that I'm really more thinking about the work that I do and not just normal people out, is a replacement. Like, what is it that you really want and desire from the behavior that you're showing right now? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And even with adults, with all types of people, I believe when they do show that kind of maladaptive behavior, there's something that they want.
Oh, yeah.
There's something deeper, rather than, okay, I actually wanted this person to pay attention to me, or I really wanted to see if I could replace this.
Yeah, I've seen that too. And it's usually after the situation's like diffused and over and done with that the purpose behind it comes out, and then they feel comfortable after they've kind of calmed down, and they start to open up and let you know, like, well, actually X, Y, and Z have really been going on, and this right here isn't what actually caused me to behave this way. Right?
And that's when you really like have built that rapport, and now you're gonna genuinely be able to start a healing process, because now we're telling the truth.
Yeah.
And back to the main topic here of being proactive versus reactive, I think that you can mitigate or cut through some months or years of going the wrong way if you're just honest about what it is you're truly trying to receive.
Yeah. And, being proactive sometimes means avoiding bad situations. And you'll hear people say, oh, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I can think of a lot of times wherein I purposefully did not go to a party. I purposefully did not meet up with a friend at a certain location because it just didn't feel right. And I use my intuition to be proactive and then not get myself into a situation where I'm going to have to react. And whether it's like in high school, missing the party where the cops came and stuff like that, like I did that often. And it's hard to explain to people when you have a bad feeling about something and you want to sit out, especially when it's your friends. But that goes into the proactive mindset and the situational awareness. And you got to worry about you and don't have FOMO, fear of missing out, because opportunities are always going to arise. And if you're not comfortable with the situation, then it's probably best that you don't put yourself in the situation.
Mm.
And I recently had to deal with a patient that was just like very um I'll just say he was bad. He was bad. He was racist. He was
Mm.
misogynistic, sexually inappropriate with women, very aggressive. Basically, all the things you don't want your patient to do in the hospital, he was doing it. And I took care of him for one day. And after the racist comments that he made and him threatening to kill me and all the other things he said to me, I had to let my supervisor know that, I can't take care of this guy anymore. That was me being proactive because he was going to put me in a situation where I had to react.
Mm.
And I've never been in a fight. I've never hit anyone in the face, I'll say. But him telling me that he wanted to kill me, him swinging at other nurses,
Mm.
and saying the N word, those
Yeah.
were things that put me in a physiological state where I felt like I needed to fight.
Yeah, man.
And it was unfortunate because, yes, you don't want women in that situation. That was my big thing. We have to have men taking care of this guy because that's the only way we can control him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he's a racist who says racist things very freely, very frequently.
Mm.
And that emotion was hard for me to look past in my task of taking care of this man. Because here he is in the hospital. He's my patient. I still have the duty and obligation to care for him. And I felt like that was compromised by the things that he was saying to me. Even though he's an alcoholic, he's withdrawn off alcohol. You can give him all these excuses, but the words can cut deep. And there's some things that can't be unsaid. They can't be, forgiven. And those were the type of things that were being said to me. So I had to put myself in the protective mode, be proactive just to make sure that my character wasn't being compromised. And that in turn made sure that I wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time because he certainly was willing to put me in a situation where I would be in the wrong place. And, not every situation is that serious or severe. And you can still avoid having any heartache or, I guess, pain if you just kind of analyze things and don't repeat certain situations.
Mm.
Now, again, with proactive, being reactive in a relationship can be detrimental. So if you're proactive in showing your love, letting your partner know that you appreciate them, helping them around the house, whatever it may be, that can save yourself a lot of tension within relationships as well. And I'm talking, specifically about romantic relationships here, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Because I know there was a time where I never thought I was doing anything wrong, but I wouldn't always think about my partner. And that's not being proactive because I'm basically waiting for something to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you put yourself in a situation where you're thinking about your partner actively, you're doing things for them, you're letting them know that you appreciate them and you love them, then that's you being proactive in defining your love and making sure that your partner is aware. And that is very beneficial. And I suggest that everyone that wants to be in a successful relationship does that because I'm at the place in my life. I think that my relationship is pretty successful, but it takes a lot of intentional movement, right?
Yeah.
And it does take those proactive actions. And anytime I find myself reacting in terms with my wife, it doesn't put me in a good place to speak my mind the way that I want to, or make her feel as loved as she is.
Man,
So
and I know that you do such a great job with that, and you and Maddie have like a goals relationship. So I'm wondering, like, what is an example of something that can put somebody in that serious romantic relationship in a reactive state that you think?
in a reactive
Yeah,
state, just poor communication,
yeah,
right? That's usually it. Um, somebody stayed out later than they were supposed to. Somebody spent money on something they weren't supposed to. Money's the main tension within relationships.
yeah,
Money is the biggest cause of divorce in our country.
true.
And so something early on in my relationship, I let my wife know I don't want money to ever be a reason that we have tension.
Mm.
So, we work hard, we have good careers, and we make money decisions together, and we don't look at our bank statement and have surprises because that puts you in a reactive state.
Man, that's some real truth right there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that really any decision that I make regarding my time, I run by my wife or at
Hmm.
least inform her. Some people get in this mindset, I'm grown, I can do what I want. Like, you're keeping tabs on me. It's like, well, if you can't deal with somebody keeping tabs on you because they care about you and they want
Hmm.
to make sure you're okay, then you probably shouldn't be in a committed relationship,
Yeah.
because it makes sense that they want to know what you're doing. But some
Yeah.
people feel very threatened by that.
Dude, you're dropping a lot of gems because for you to segue from being proactive in a situation that keeps you safe and free, right? Before you start talking about the romantic relationships, you're talking about how you brought yourself out of a situation where you may have reacted physically.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we bring up the statistic when talking about consequences about how 1 in 4 black men in America are incarcerated. And a lot of times that comes from reacting in a situation where you were met with your anger and you
Hmm.
react physically or
Hmm.
whatever. And the ability to think about how you can be proactive in all situations and never put yourself in a circumstance where you might make a decision that can get you arrested
Yeah.
is huge. That would take away a lot of the people, but it's hard. Emotions come into play the same way you're talking about emotions come into play with money and your romantic relationships.
Well, and that guy I took care of in the hospital, if he had said all those things to me on the street,
Mm, exactly.
oh
And how
man,
many have? Think about it. Like, this is
yeah,
America. Like,
yeah,
Childish Gambino said, like, this is America. A lot of people have been met with those types of remarks, and
yeah.
their reaction got them locked up.
Because none of those things that man was saying to me were acceptable. But
Hmm.
there's not really a setting where it would have been acceptable for me to fight him because of it. But depending on the setting, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and somebody is saying these threatening things to you and you feel like you're in this protective mode, then something pretty bad could end up happening, right?
Yeah.
And then along with that as well, people reacting physically, that is never an option in a relationship.
Hmm.
And if someone's reacting physically in a relationship, you need to get away from it.
Yeah.
People don't deserve second chances when they're physical in a relationship.
Hmm.
If someone hits you, they do not need to be with you. And I don't know why that's such a hard concept, but I guarantee if that's something you remember, you're probably going to be a lot more successful in whatever you're doing. You don't push, you don't kick, you don't nothing. No aggression should be shown towards the people that you love.
Hmm.
And that's simple as that.
I agree.
Um,
I agree. But just to kind of loop and finish up my thought there, your first point on being proactive in a situation where you could be in danger is great. And then pair that with being proactive in the relationship, because a lot of times in our media, in the African American culture, it's the violence that's shown and exalted, and it's the
oh,
love
yeah.
that's diminished. And the
Right.
points that you just made are the basically rebuttals to that. How you show you're proactive in your relationship with your love, and you're proactive to make sure that you're never in an aggressive situation that could take you away from that love.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's so beautiful and so real.
Yeah. And it's hard because, I'm the protector of my family, right? So even sometimes, whether the threat is towards you or the threat's towards your family, like you said, you get in this protective state, and sometimes you trying to do that gets you in trouble.
Mm.
So you just have to have that situational awareness and really take a step back before you react. I like to tie in a lot of these concepts to money and finances just because it's something that we all have to deal with, and it's something that people get a little uncomfortable talking about for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And being proactive with your money is extremely important because people that don't plan and don't have any intention with their money, besides buying material items and going on trips and uh, doing whatever's flashy and looks cool, that's not a good place to be in, because then once the market crashes or your car crashes or your
Mm,
health crashes, you have to be reactive, and trying to react financially is very, very stressful. And I'm sure we all have experienced that at some point to some level. But, a lot of people can't afford to get their tire fixed if they get a flat tire.
mm,
And, wage is very important in that, but there has to be some type of proactive mindset when you get that paycheck. How am I going to make this money provide for me and possibly my family? How am I going to make this money more money? How am I going to save? Because you have to save. And I suggest people invest, but proper investment comes with a lot of planning and a lot
mhm,
of education and a lot of preparation. So, having that proactive mindset, increasing your intelligence and your IQ, and making plans of what you're going to do with your money is one of the biggest pieces of advice I could give to someone, because right now the economy is tough. A lot of people are losing their jobs. People are quitting their jobs.
mhm,
And I know people that quit their job and don't have any plan.
mm,
And that makes me anxious hearing that.
for sure.
Oh, I'm quitting my job because I don't like it. Okay, cool. What are you doing? I don't know yet. I'm going to start. Ooh,
Yeah. Yeah, because
I,
it's so true. Like we all are trying to figure out that way to kind of get out of the rat race. A lot of people don't want to feel like they're in that like work pay off what I have as loans or
right.
mortgages and like this continuous cycle that they call the rat race.
But people make it work.
Exactly. With a plan, right? They make it work
Well, some
with
people make it work without a plan too, and
mm,
that's why everybody thinks it's okay to do it.
true, huh? True. Yeah. And you got to not compare yourself because some people are able to take risks. Why would they be able to do that and another person couldn't?
Well, like with me, I know I have a lot of resources, and I know a lot of people love me and want to make sure I don't fail. And
Mm,
I don't want to put myself in a situation where I have to rely on those people. But I do know if I was in a really bad situation, there's a lot of folks that would want to make sure that I'm not out here on the streets, right?
mhm,
I just have too much pride to like get myself in that situation. And then I see people that get in that situation, and then they have too much pride to ask for help. But I also see people that get in that situation and then all they do is ask for help, but they don't put in the work to make sure that they can maintain themselves,
mhm.
so they get used to getting the help. And then that can put you in a reactive state, because every time you need something, you're trying to go find it rather than you making a plan of how you're going to get it before you need it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and you're correct. A lot of that financial growth comes with education, how you
Oh,
said,
yeah.
and I think that's one thing that we neglect often. We believe that we want these assets, if we even know, what assets are yet. We believe we want these assets, but we don't want to take the time to sit, study how the accumulation of your asset and how you can turn it into other things and flip it
Hmm.
into other avenues for yourself, because ultimately what my goal looks like is that I just do the things that I enjoy doing while my assets are providing,
Right.
right, and providing security for the future and
Hmm.
also providing something that I passed down through generations,
Yeah.
because that's my biggest motivation.
And I think a lot of people have that goal.
Mhm.
Now, the difference of how you and I approach it, we've we've developed a lot of things while we have a full-time job. I hear a lot of people say, "I don't want to work a 9 to 5. Like, I want to work for myself. I want to do this and that." So they quit their job and then they go try to start a business with no capital and no plan.
Mm.
And that's one of the craziest things I think you can do. Again, some people make it work, but it's not good odds of you having a successful process when you do it that way. So if you find a way to develop things and make plans and be proactive while you have stability,
Mhm.
and then your motivation to work hard in what you want to do and what your goals are is that I want to get out of this situation that I'm in now. then you're going to be a lot more successful, and you're going to be a lot more appreciative when you finally get to that point where it's appropriate for you to leave
Mm.
whatever that 9 to 5 that you dread was.
So appreciative.
Yeah.
Because you're going to think about all those days that you were grinding, that you had to find energy, you know, and that's one thing why last episode I asked you to share with people how you went from kind of having a tough day to doing your podcast. Now we're talking about being proactive. It takes all these little ideas to bring your will to come and do these things that are going to grow upon. So then one day you can be in that vibe that you want to be in financially.
And everything I do to start my morning is being proactive. You know, drinking water when I wake up, trying to get sunlight exposure in the morning, feeding my body, taking my vitamins, saying my prayers. Those are all things that I do to set myself up for having a good day, for feeling good, for having energy, and ultimately for being there for my daughter. Like if I neglect those things that I do to take care of myself, then I know I'm not going to be on my A game for my little girl. And she deserves the best of me at all times. That's why I tell people you have to be proactive in your health. And you can't let yourself go. You can't just let yourself be unhealthy. Some people think that that's a normal aging process, to start hurting and gain a lot of weight and not be able to move and to be depressed. Like, those things don't have to happen. You just have to be proactive about it, right? You have to have a plan, and it takes diligence and it takes consistency. And then once you prioritize those things, that's what you do for you. That's how you invest in yourself. But in turn, you're capable of so many other things for other people. But when you're being reactive and you have to go to the doctor because you haven't been in 10 years and now something popped up and you have this injury, et cetera, then you spend a lot more time trying to take care of yourself because you're picking up all these broken pieces instead of looking at the beautiful puzzle that you've already put together. So maintenance is key. And it's never too late to turn back on whatever bad habits you have. And, you know, I run into a lot of people with addictions. And one of the worst addictions that I hate to see is people that smoke cigarettes. And I understand how addictive it is, not only the chemical within the cigarette, but the action of smoking the cigarette and the I guess the time that you get away from whatever you're doing, because you have to go outside and be by yourself, or maybe it's a social thing and you're out there with a buddy. But breaking those habits after 20, 30, 40 years can seem impossible. But as soon as you stop smoking cigarettes, your body starts trying to repair itself. So these people that have been smoking for decades, once they stop, a week later, they start having this gross, nasty cough and they're coughing up black stuff. But then in a couple of weeks, they're not doing that anymore because their body cleanses itself. And then the repair starts. People don't realize that that damage that you do from smoking, it'll take a long time, but you can get back to almost normal as long as you don't have like emphysema, COPD or something where there's like irreversible damage. And that goes for a lot of other situations too. I use smoking as an example, but you know, you can refer that to binge eating or your binge watching of television or whatever addiction or bad habit you have. If you put in the effort to stop that, you will see the benefits.
And that could also like come into play with a lot of negative self-talk. You know, the way that we like to bring things to financial talks, I also like to bring them to the psychology and the just day-to-day human psychology. Because a lot of times we're reactive to our own mind. We're reactive to these own fleeting thoughts that our mind produces that a lot of times has nothing to do with us. A lot of times it's almost just like a fleeting thing that's going past your mind, but we'll use our energy and will to grab onto it and identify with it and take that thought for a ride and then jump on to the next one. And we're just reacting to all these stimuli that's within our brain. Not realizing that we don't have to. We can be proactive and say, I'm just going to watch the thoughts go by and I'm going to focus on what it is that I want to create. Right? We have that ability, but that's very difficult for us to do. And I think a lot of times that's why we go to a substance that's addictive so we can kind of escape the moment. If our moment is uncomfortable, we might want to escape it. You know, what's really interesting is that on Kendrick Lamar's last album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, he has this song called like Mother I Sober. And in that song, he's saying all these different things. You haven't felt grief until you felt it sober, or you haven't felt being alone until you felt it sober. And he's bringing up all these really deep emotions, but he's like, you haven't really even felt that if you haven't sat with it sober. And it's so true.
Yeah.
You know, that's a little gym in hip hop that I'm like, wow, that's deep.
It is
because
deep.
that's it.
Yeah, because we all know somebody that copes with a substance, whether it's alcohol or something else. And that there's so much truth in that statement, you know, because that is numbing, it's masking the issue. And it's not being proactive in addressing the issue. It's bottling it up and trying not to acknowledge it, which is not ever going to benefit you. So, you know, being proactive in your daily life, I would say, is one of the most valuable habits that you can develop. And that's not just for yourself, but for all the other people that have to deal with you on a daily basis. No, I'm just kidding. All the people that have the blessing of being in your presence on a daily basis, because that's the self-talk that we like to promote. You know, I truly believe that I'm a blessing, and I truly believe that there's just an abundance of blessings coming in my way. And I like to surround myself with other people whom I think are blessings to me. And that in itself is being proactive, deciding who you're going to be around, and making sure that the people you spend your time with have your best interests in mind and appreciate you. Because I think it's pretty easy usually to tell whether somebody appreciates you or not. And if it is difficult for you to decide, then they probably don't appreciate you that much. But I don't want people to get too caught up on that, because we do a lot of things expecting reactions from people, right? And people might not react the way that you would prefer. As you're being proactive and trying to anticipate, you might do something that you think is fantastic. And again, you have to decide that for yourself. What I've done is great. You tell you, good. Don't wait for the other person to you know, verify that for you, because that's going to put you in this loop to where you start second guessing yourself in your proactive actions. And when you are proactive, it is going to be beneficial, and you just have to recognize the fruits that you're bearing from that. Now, I hear a lot of people say that they don't enjoy spending time with someone who they spend time with regularly. Um, I think that automatically puts people in a reactive state. If you think that your situation is going to be negative and you're going to be spending time with someone who you don't really trust that much, or you don't really enjoy them because they might say things that make you uncomfortable, you're almost preparing yourself to be reactive, which can be almost even worse than just being reactive blindly, because it kind of builds up this anxiety that we've talked about before. And you just be much better off setting yourself up in a way to where you're not going to be in those situations that you know are not favorable. And a good way to do that is to address things, like we said before, being proactive and letting people know how their behavior isn't acceptable to you, or letting people know that they're making you uncomfortable, and letting people know that you're hesitant to spend time with them, you know, because I think that there is a nice way to do that if it's really troubling. And having those difficult conversations will benefit you in the long run, and hopefully give that individual some insight and the opportunity to improve themselves. Now, proactive versus reactive in physical conflict. We touched on that for a moment, but you know, every time I see a fight, I'm a little bit puzzled. And I remember, like in high school, it was almost like being at the zoo when a fight would happen.
Right.
Here's somebody being antagonizing, and then someone's reaction is they're gonna plan to beat them up over it. And my whole life, I haven't really been able to understand that, and it was actually difficult for me to watch fights. And it took me a while to even be interested in like boxing and UFC. I watch them now, understanding that they're sport, but like a random street fight, it's hard for me to watch, because it's like watching animals. And I hope nobody's offended by that, because I know a lot of people that have been in fights, but it's a primal thing to think that you're going to beat someone up and come out the victor and be rewarded for it, right? Because you're more often than not going to have to face a consequence because you won. And anything that I win, I want there to be a reward, not a consequence.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Why do you think that is such a common reaction for people to fight to settle their differences?
Yeah. And I think that it's because they've exhausted their words a lot of times. I feel like people aren't able to come to a more civil agreement to a dispute because they've exhausted the words that they have. And now all they have left is their fists. And they're like, you know what? This is going to speak louder than anything I could articulate in this moment. Right. And I think that that's the power of, right, gaining knowledge. So then you're able to kind of avoid as much things that could be detrimental to your own freedom as possible. You know what I mean? So that's one. But also, I understand that there is a lot of pride behind fighting culture. And I don't want to diminish that. I don't want to be disrespectful to the fighting culture.
Right.
But I get what you're saying, because in a primal state, I guess there would be warring people. You know, I'm even thinking to like the behavioral psychology. There was the lady who lived amongst the apes. She lived amongst the gorillas for a long time. She got to know, I wish I knew her name. I should know her name off top, but she got to know, right? She's very famous. She got to know,
Jane
I think it is like Jane something.
Adams?
Yeah. You know what?
Yeah, look that up real quick.
Yeah.
I swear it's a Jane. I might be thinking of like
I was thinking,
Tarzan.
oh, Diane Fossey.
Diane.
Yeah, Diane Fossey, the woman who lived with the gorillas. But when she was, learning about the ways that they interacted, gorillas, a lot of time when they get in too big of a group, there's just fights amongst the males, and there's fights for hierarchies and dominance. So this is a behavior that you see, but I believe that our communication is our biggest, I think
asset.
Exactly. I think the pen
Yeah.
is mightier than the sword. Like that's one of my foundational beliefs, is that the pen is mightier than the sword. So the things that we can write and articulate is going to be better than what we can hit with.
I mean, our communication is really all that separates us from apes.
For sure.
Obviously, we look different. We're not covered in hair. We're not huge. But when it comes to how we interact in our daily actions, apes do a lot of things that are very similar to humans. But they're not able to communicate as effectively. They're not able to express their ideas. They're not able to diffuse situations with their words, like you said. And we talked earlier in this episode about how being proactive sometimes comes with you educating yourself and increasing your IQ. Because I know one thing, I never saw the quote unquote nerdy kid in high school getting into fights.
No.
I seen a nerdy kid get beat up, which was awful to see. But now, the kids that are fighting all the time probably working for that kid.
Exactly. And that's another way I think we get tricked out of like really using the power of our mind, is by getting this pride and being physically aggressive. And hey, I could just pummel you if you do something I don't enjoy.
And people egg you on and support that behavior, right? Especially when you're a teenage boy. But when you're a grown man, that should not be what you resort to.
I'm not even gonna lie. When I watch UFC fights, when I'm scrolling and I see the highlights of the knockouts, it's like, oh, that hurts. It hurts my soul. It's almost traumatizing. When I see people like, I don't even want to go into details, but it's interesting how much we love that, right? And even thinking back to the like Roman Colosseums and how they would have these fights with slaves and lions and these shows of just atrocious violence that the people of the community would love to see. So I think there is something inside of us that does like to see that.
Oh yeah, that's why there's a big crowd every time there is a fight.
Right.
Yeah, that is interesting. It is in human nature for some reason to see suffering. I don't think it. Well, maybe it's because it makes you feel better about your own suffering, right? Because we're all suffering with something.
Yeah.
And then I guess if you see people fighting, it kind of takes away from your suffering. Like they're taking some of that pain for you, possibly. But it's been something that I've been a little perplexed about for my entire life. And I'm not a physical altercation kind of person. And I think that the mindset of one love has guided me in a way where I'm being proactive to maintain that, even when people provoke me. And I just know that, like we said, the person that reacts usually gets the punishment. And if me as an adult gets in a fight, I'll probably get locked up, and I don't have time to be in jail.
I know. And I've had so many conversations with kids that are like, but you'll look like a punk though, you know? And it's like, they're like, but can you take that though? Can you take looking like you got defeated and everyone's going to think you're soft?
And you look like a punk to who? I'm not going to look like a punk to my mother. I'm not going to look like a punk to my wife.
Everyone who needs me to be free. I'm not going to look like a punk to them.
So,
exactly.
You know, be proactive in who you decide opinions is going to matter in your life too, right? Because we can worry about what the world is thinking of us, and especially in a society of social media where it does feel like the world is watching you. Sometimes you might feel more supported by defending yourself publicly. And I'm just here to tell you that it's not the answer, and you're probably going to have to face consequences that will potentially be detrimental, not only in your image, but in your situation. So you got to be appreciative of all the blessings that you have. And if you're willing to throw that away at the blink of an eye to hit somebody in the face, then I guess be my guest. And I'll stay out of it because I'm a pacifist.
Trying to reap every reward that freedom has.
Did you see the video of the teacher and the girl getting in a fight?
Yeah, I've seen those. I've seen multiple ones. So I don't know. No.
So there's a black female teacher, a young black female student, and she took her phone. And the girl's like behind the desk, like, give me my phone. And then she like reached, like kind of pushed her a little bit. And then the teacher says, don't touch me. And then she like the student pushed her arm a little bit and she said, don't touch me. And then the student like really hard tried to swing and the teacher blocked it and like put her hands on her and they're on the ground. And I had very mixed emotions about it. I'll have to show you the video. You know, the teacher definitely could have been a little bit better in de-escalating the situation. Sometimes just saying don't touch me is not enough, and allowing the student to get to the point where she's already in her space behind the desk probably wasn't being proactive enough in avoiding that conflict. It's unfortunate. I hope the teacher doesn't get bad consequences because she was protecting herself at the end of it because the student tried to hit her very hard, but she did not connect with her, but then they continued the fight. So, you know, there's hair pulling and stuff. So,
oh, man.
Yeah.
They were really fighting. How did this become resolved? Does it show?
So the teacher's like on top of the girl, basically like keeping her still. And she's telling people like, go get another teacher, like go get a teacher, go get a teacher. And so she's not sitting there like wailing on her or anything, but it's just tough to watch because it was just an unfortunate situation because you deal with a lot of kids who don't know how to express themselves.
And that have tried to fight their teachers.
And that have tried to fight their teachers. And then I can just relate to that because, again, I had a patient to where he's swinging at people and I told my supervisor, I feel like I'm going to get in trouble if I protect myself here, you know, especially knowing that there's a history of him saying racist things. I could just see how someone would say that I had like some emotional charge and that, you know, however that would get twisted upon me. And I was like, I just can't be in this situation. But for teachers, they don't really have that liberty. You know, they have kids that they see regularly and there might be multiple situations building up over time because we don't know what all happened before that led up to that much tension for them to put hands on each other, right?
Some of these little comments that these kids make to their teachers like day in and day out add up in the teacher's mind.
Nasty comments.
For sure.
So I'd be interested in knowing that. But again, with the adult interacting with the child, I do feel that there was more that the teacher could have done. To avoid that situation. Without putting blame on anyone.
Yeah, like you said, proximity, right? I mean, you already see that this person is coming into your space. Like that's your first red flag.
As soon as the video starts, you knew that it was going to be a physical altercation. You know? So,
honestly, in that situation, I'm probably, if we don't have some type of security to respond, then I'm probably going to remove myself from the room because there's nothing good that can happen here. And it's not like this girl was attacking students. It was a conflict with you.
And over a phone.
But then that leads to the question, are you taking her phone and leaving the room? Because now you probably have a bigger problem on your hand.
Me personally, okay, you take your phone, but you're gonna go to the principal's
Yeah,
office,
exactly.
right?
Here, it's not
Like,
worth it, but I'm about to go and deal with this,
hmm
another way. You're gonna have consequences, but it's not gonna be us going hands on with you.
yeah, yeah, that's never the answer.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little commercial break so Russ could view the video that we were talking about.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I was first imagining it, I didn't think about the lady, the substitute teacher, kind of being the initiator of any type of energy, even
Yeah,
though the young girl was approaching her space and getting into her zone.
the
The substitute was still a little aggressive towards her.
and I didn't realize either that the teacher did put her hands on the girl
Yeah.
first, like not hitting, but like kind of pushing, nudging away. Which, again, being proactive to not letting that student in your space behind the desk like that's just something that you have to do initially.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's unfortunate.
For sure. And I have this conversation a lot too, with teachers, staff, paraprofessionals, all types of people that work with kids about how the consequence is sometimes delayed.
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of times we might want somebody to feel this consequence right now for their actions, but it's like, hey, if you go about this the right way, file the incident report, file what's
hmm
supposed to happen, then the consequence will occur and the best thing will happen for all parties, right? Because somebody who's down to just get physically aggressive over a phone
hmm
probably is going to need to have a different level of support,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I mean, you might feel like your property is being taken. If it was an adult, I guess. So this is a problem now I've kind of just thought about that we come down to a lot. Some kids really feel like they
They're
are an adult.
adults.
And
Yeah.
it's when you do something that's like impeding upon their liberties, they're like,
Yeah.
nah, I'm going through all lengths to make sure I have my
Right.
rights here. And it's,
Right. Especially that like 15, 16 range.
dude, it's
Because
sad.
some kids get treated like adults at that age, right?
Dude, I've worked with some young girls that wake up and cook their little siblings breakfast and get them
hmm
ready for school the whole time they need to get ready for middle school. And they come to school
hmm
exhausted. Like, I've been up taking care of people.
Yeah.
How you going to tell me to raise my hand?
Right.
I've had these
Right.
conversations, and I do understand that can be tough. And that's why, as the adult, you have to be proactive in getting yourself in the right situation, right?
hmm
Because you can't
hmm
allow these variables that are outside of your control to be the reason why you end up in a video looking crazy with your hands on a
Right.
kid.
Yeah. Because you can't really explain that.
Mm-mm.
The video's there, and there's like, whatever she says, like the video speaks for itself, in my opinion. So, I just invite everyone, regardless of what role you're in, to be proactive, not reactive, because being reactive will most likely put you in an unfavorable situation.
Mhm.
And you are perfectly capable of preparing yourself for whatever life is going to throw at you, because life will throw some things at you, and you got to be ready for it. We're all going to respond to things in different ways, but you can just really set yourself up for success if you think ahead of time and plan and anticipate what it is that you'll be faced with. And I think that's a good place to wrap up this conversation.
Yeah.
Proactive versus reactive. Keep it in your mind,
Mm.
in the forefront, because it's something that'll be relevant for you every single day. And once again, so appreciative. Thank you for listening to another episode of R&B Podcast with your boys, with your men, Russ and Blake. And we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Peace.